They're the elite of NHRA sportsman drag racing. 230-mile-per-hour top alcohol dragsters and funny cars. In past coverage, we've examined the methanol fuel they use and why. We've focused on the superchargers used to develop 3,000 horsepower. But to my ear, these cars are as enjoyable to listen to as they are to watch. 5,100 RPM just to stage and launch. 9,100 RPM at the top of all three gears. How do they do it? Welcome everyone to Sanair International Dragstrip just outside of Montreal and our coverage of the NHRA Canadian Sports Nationals. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Evans. And you know, when we talk about 9,100 RPM with a top alcohol funny car like this one of Todd Payton's, you have to bear in mind, these are not tiny little 4-valve per cylinder dual overhead cam racing engines. These are huge motors approaching 600 cubic inches, patterned after a Chrysler engine developed in 1951. The camshaft is down in the valley. It operates all of these push rods, which operate the rocker arms, which open and shut the valves. Large retainers, huge springs. There is so much action going on in this valve train, it is unbelievable. And how they withstand the kind of punishment they're subjected to, I'll never figure out. Now, how does the driver control the RPM? The same way you or I would with a standard shift street performance car. Right, Brock Yates?
Well, Steve, for all of you out there who've done any kind of production car drag racing, you know exactly what we're talking about. This is Mike Koski, the defending champion here at Sanair. They're working on his top alcohol dragster, and believe me, when he climbs into the cockpit of this race car, he doesn't have a whole lot to work with. Pretty basic and rudimentary system here. Of course, he's got the clutch. He'll ride that as he comes to the line, the throttle over here. Mike will come to the line using the tachometer, buzzes the engine to about 5,000 RPMs as he launches. From there on in, it's strictly instinct. He's got these two buttons to make his 2-3 shift and shift up into top gear. But after that, he'll make those gear changes at about 9,000 RPMs based purely on his experience and the way the engine feels. He will not use the tachometer at all. Pretty much a basic operation for Mike. But in the third class we're going to cover today, a whole lot more sophisticated stuff at work. And for more on that, let's go to our pal, Big Daddy Don Garlitz.
Well, Brock, once again, our sportsman coverage will include Competition Eliminator. And I am setting in Tony and Joanne Grasso's C-altered Oldsmobile. Now, this car has got more whistles and bells on it than your local fire engine, in contrast to Mike Koski's top alcohol dragster, which he drives by the seat of his pants, only looks at the tack once as he goes up to stage. Tony feels like electronics are the answer to consistency. Now, in this particular car, the brain that controls everything is this MSD ignition system. That thing does a lot of functions. It controls the distributor advance, which Tony can change a chip in and make the distributor go more or less. It has an RPM limiter, again, another chip which controls that. And it sends a signal to Tony and tells him what the right RPM is to shift. Now, that goes up through these wires and to this light right here. That's right in his windshield as he drives down the quarter mile. That light flashes on. Tony pushes this little green button right here on the steering wheel, and this 5-speed Nash transmission goes into action. Now, they tried to shift these things manually in the beginning, but nobody could shift them accurately every time. That MSD ignition has taken care of that. At precisely the right RPM, the light goes on, Tony pushes the button, the transmission shifts. Now, they've gotten so sophisticated with these electronics that some of the competitors are rumored to have that MSD ignition actually do the signal and shift the transmission. All the driver would have to do is drive down a quarter mile, holding the green button down all the time. Now, that's illegal, and NHRA is trying to police that out of the class, but it does show you how competitive this class is. It is rightfully named Competition Eliminator.
We're not far away from the little but very pretty village of Saint-Pie, which is near Granby, which is all about 45 minutes outside of Montreal, and it is very, very French. The food, the culture, it's just a real experience to come up here, right, Brock?
And a perfect day for racing. Temperature in the mid-70s, low humidity, sunshine across the mountains here in the background, and St. Lawrence River just a few miles away. As we get ready to go with a good race. Bill Barney, In the near lane, Wayne Selko. This is round 2 of Top Alcohol Dragster.
Bill Barney recently moved to Knoxville, Tennessee from California to be closer to all the Midwestern action. Wayne Selko, well, he's out of East Brunswick, New Jersey, which is not too far from the Englishtown racetrack, where we visit once a year for the NHRA Summer Nationals. Now, Bill Barney, he qualified with a 6:10. Terrific number. Beat Bob Leverage in round number 1. Selko qualified in the 6th. Bob with the 6:12. Beat Chuck Waters in round 1. So these two only about 200ths of a second apart off paper anyway as they bring those RPMs up. A little tire smoke off of Barney's car that may hurt him. Selko gets squirrely, and Barney comes back with a disappointing for him. 6:22, 223 mile per hour charge. Selko a little bit slower at 6:27. Brock is with crew chief Mike Cooper.
22, what do you think?
Not very well. I'm not very impressed with it.
Got work to do, huh?
Yeah, we smoked, shook the tires. I think we got more sunlight than we did yesterday, so we'll have to dial into that.
Got a little more work to do, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Go get him, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Mike Cooper is certainly disappointed with Barney's performance. Now, as we watch the replay, I would like to draw your attention to that far lane. You notice the car wasn't lined up correctly. Notice how it causes him to drift over to the center. Add that to the fact that there's a slight bump out there just a ways off the line. That lane could be a problem for these cars today.
Well, we'll definitely keep our eye on that, Big Daddy, as 2 more Top Alcohol Dragsters coming to the line for round 2. Steve Lamplaw in the far lane doing his burnout. In the near lane, that's Doug Doucette. Doucette has the lane choice, and in fact, ran low ET here of the event, a 6:016, so he could be the man to beat. Let's go to Steve.
First words out of this man's mouth, we hear it a lot down here. Rather plaintively, he asked, did I win? Yes, you won.
Yeah, well, I knew we didn't run very well, and I wasn't really sure whether they were starting to tell me how bad the thing ran, and I was curious about it.
I can tell you how bad the thing ran.
Yeah, I know it did.
Ran a 6:22.
Yeah, it shook real hard in second gear and had a short shift and go right into high, and they don't run very well when that happens.
Yeah, but you're not the only driver complaining of that kind of shake.
Yeah, it's a problem that we all have to deal with out here, and the particular setup we chose this time for the track just wasn't right.
How do you whack a 10th off of your ET for the next round?
We're going to have to go back and work on it and decide what the problem was.
Well, that shake is a fine line between having enough horsepower to get down the track and not spinning the tires.
Okay, back at the starting line. We'll see how Doucette does as he backs into position. Remember now, he had low ET. He was also the #1 qualifier with a 6:028. So the man from Winnipeg, Manitoba, way out in the western provinces, comes in here with some real horsepower. Steve Lamplaw, well, he qualified #9 at a 6:22. He beat Mike Burns in round #1 and decidedly has some catching up to do, Big Daddy, if he's going to get anywhere near Doucette's time.
Yeah, Doucette looks to me like he is the class of the field, but you know, sometimes that causes the other drivers to step on their equipment harder and tune them out.
Well, you can tell that this is a bit of a tricky track. These cars are capable of 5-second performance. We have not seen that here. Oh, what a hole shot. Exceedingly early was Lamplaw, exceedingly late was Doucette, and it bit Doucette. The bad guy, the #1 qualifier, is out of here, courtesy of Steve Lamplaw. A 6:21 beats a 6:09. That's embarrassing, Big.
Well, it's a classic example, Steve, of a guy getting overconfident. The 6:01 and the 6:02 that he enjoyed earlier, he just sat there on the line and gave the guy plenty of time, and Lamplaw took advantage of it and stormed out of there with a 4:20 reaction time. Let's look at the numbers. Here you see how a 6:21 beats a 6:09. You do it at the line. 0.420 for Lamplaw, 0.559 for Doucette.
Well, that B1 Bomber Dodge motor you're looking at, much like a Pro Stock might use, only with a blower and fuel injection, was part of the success here. But, Steve, you were the big part. Talk about your hole shots. 6:21 for you, 6:09 for the #1 qualifier. You almost red-lighted.
Oh, thank you. I knew it was there. We had to get him. He was stout, there's no doubt. Our first round was yesterday, first one ever. Second one now, I don't know.
You cut that so fine. You didn't know for sure if maybe you hadn't left a red light.
I didn't know. It was close. It picked the front end up, we were going.
Now you need a little more horsepower, a little more ET somewhere.
She's got it. We just got to be easy with it.
This is a brand new combination and coming along just fine, thank you.
Boy, you can tell they're excited about that new engine, and quite possibly there is some more horsepower left in it, and I'm sure we'll see it today.
Okay, more round 2 action here as we watch Dale C. Hall, the number 7 qualifier to 6.1. He is going to go against a serious player. Mike Koski, the defending champion here at Sanair, backing into position. Mike, the number 2 qualifier at a 6:03. He beat Augie Vettorino in round number 1. As we showed you earlier, Mike Koski, like a lot of these guys, drives these cars purely on instinct. Mike from Cuddy, Pennsylvania, won a lot of national events, a good, solid professional. Dale Hall from Granby, Connecticut. He's the number 7 qualifier. He beat Michael Bartone in round number 1 and definitely has his work cut out for him. Although, as we saw earlier, Big Daddy, low ET numbers don't necessarily assure you a win.
You got to be a good driver, too. There's a racetrack biting Dale Hall.
Hall did a great job of keeping that car right side up, jumping up and down the crew of Koski. A very nice 6:08 with the Oldsmobile-powered top alcohol dragster, 224 miles per hour. Brock is with crew chief Butch Nahr.
Butch, 6:08, got to be pleased.
Oh, definitely. We used up quite a few parts earlier this weekend. We finally started to come around and catch up to it, and I think we got a good handle on it now for another round at least.
Mike made a good pass.
Yes, he did. Very good pass, and we're real pleased with it. It's just about where we thought it was going to go. I think if we can keep up 2 more rounds of an 08 or an 07 like that, we're going to take this thing.
Go get him.
Thank you.
Once again, the story is not necessarily the winner. As we watch the replay, watch the far lane over there with Dale Hall. Takes a beautiful starting line advantage, but that's the story just starting. Watch that car move over toward the center line. Dale masterfully controls it, keeps it from crossing the line, hitting the cones. Look, it turns again. He gets it again. It's a real driver that can do that, but unfortunately it didn't win the race.
So that sets up the pairings for the final 4 in top alcohol dragster. The hitters, Mike Koski versus Bill Barney. Koski will have lane choice. The second pair, Steve Lamplaw and Rich McPhillips. McPhillips enjoys the lane choice at a 6.1. Let's go to Steve.
Well, the defending champion here in Montreal is well on his way to repeat, Mike Koski. 6:08.
6:08, that's pretty good. That should be lowered around.
It is so far.
The guy's got this thing going good. I think we can repeat it. We're going to sure try.
Okay, it's time now for round 2 of the top alcohol funny cars. The same basic mechanics as we saw on the dragsters, rearranged with the engine in front of the driver. Some say they're harder to handle than the dragsters. Some say, nah, they're just more fun because they do long, smoky burnouts. I like both of them. Doesn't really matter to me. Now, here's a fellow that got a huge break. He is Dick Bell, driving for the Bell Boys. Now, he qualified right in the middle of the 16-car field at 6:13. He beat Frank Madden yesterday in round number 1, Bell from Nashua, New Hampshire. Now, he was scheduled to meet in round 2 today the man who qualified number 1, Chuck Cheeseman, at 6.06 seconds. It'd have been tough to beat. Instead, Bell will get a bye because of this. Round 1 yesterday. Cheeseman's car, well, watch for yourself. He had a nice run going, a little smoke off the tires, and then listen. That is the sound of destruction. Motor parts rattling inside the engine and bouncing off of the guardrail. Cheeseman unable to make it back today, so Dick Bell will have a bye.
Well, you got to remember, this is a sportsman class, and every one of these cars doesn't pack a $30,000 spare engine. They're out here kind of just doing it for fun. So when they have a destruction like Cheeseman experienced yesterday, sometimes they just can't come back.
All right, here is Dick Bell. He'll go all out for lane choice. That belongs to the quicker driver in the round to come. Ooh, and he may just get it. 6:11, 6.11 second elapsed time for the quarter mile, 228 miles an hour. Brock is with his crew chief, his brother Charlie.
What do you think, Charlie? 6:11 on a clean pass.
Well, I hope it'll be good enough to keep us in eliminations. Preferably lane choice. I think it's real important here.
What do you think it's going to take to win this one?
Probably O's, like 05s, 06s, something like that.
Well, for Dick Bell, the bad news was he had to race the number 1 qualifier, Chuck Cheeseman. But the good news for Dick Bell, certainly not Cheeseman, was that yesterday Cheeseman apparently broke his engine so badly he was unable to bring it into the staging lanes, and you just saw Dick Bell play his version of Beat the Clock with a very nice 6:11 elapsed time. We'll let him get the sock off there so that we can hear his docile tones. If he can get it off.
We'll get it off.
Great job.
Thank you very much. We've kind of been off the pace and we're trying to tune it up, and we were hoping for an O, but we'll take the 11 and see what happens next round.
A lot of the dragsters are complaining of tire shake or car shake, really. Are the funny cars experiencing that as well?
Didn't shake at all on that run. It has been every run up here, but that one was good and smooth, and I think maybe we're on to what we need to have to win this.
Let's hope you are. See you soon.
Thank you much.
Okay, so Dick Bell moves on in the competition. The Bell boys from Nashua, New Hampshire, back at the starting line. That's Ed Parker's funny car, the Cape Codder, pretty automobile, backing into position. Parker out of Calumet, Massachusetts, the number 3 qualifier to 6:08. He beat Bob Sweet in round number 1. He's going to go against Anthony Bartone from right outside New York, out on Long Island. The number 11 qualifier got by Dennis Petrosian in round number 1.
Well, Tony Bartone and his brother involved in publishing a theater magazine in New York. Let's see how Tony performs. Problems again in that far lane. Bartone blasts through at 6.25 seconds, 228 miles per hour, as Parker struggles over on that far side of the racetrack. Let's go to Brock.
Well, at 6:25, looked like he got a little loose about half track.
Yeah, well, we tried to leave a little bit too hard. We were trying to shoot for lane choice for next round, and we just overstepped it a little bit on the starting line. But we got something left. We just got to back off a little bit on the bottom end.
Well, go get him. You're in it anyway.
Thank you.
Okay.
Boy, there's good help. That's Jeff Rapp, himself a former championship driver. Back in the pits, Bill Barney, here's his crew. They are changing a transmission, trying to drop that 622 back down in the O's where it belongs, maybe looking for a different ratio in low gear. Stay with us. We'll be back with more of the NHRA Canadian Sports Nationals here in Quebec right after these words.
Back at Sanair Raceway outside Montreal for more NHRA Canadian Sports Nationals competition. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans and Big Daddy Don Garlitz. And now let's go to Steve at the other end with Tony Bartone.
So the magazine publisher from New York City, Tony Bartone, goes into the Final Four. But the elapsed time, I don't think he particularly wants on the front page of National Dragster. It sounded, Tony, like you had to get off the throttle. Did it shake on you?
Yeah, we left the line, and it did shake a bit. Pedaled it, got back on it. We were lucky enough to get around on the top end.
Well, still, a 625, considering you were off the gas, that's not bad.
It ran pretty good once we got past the point where it shook. And we'll try to step it back up and get ready for the next round.
Okay, in the meantime, Bob Elliott goes against Paul Johnson. Elliott in the near lane, backing into position. Johnson is the defending champion here, Steve.
But Johnson does not have lane choice. He's over on that treacherous far side, and you can bet he and his crew have looked at that pavement and tried to figure out how they can line up this vehicle maybe a little bit differently than some of the other teams have and try to conquer whatever the problem is, whether there's a slick spot. We know there's a little bit of a bump, but it appears to be getting progressively worse from what we've seen so far anyway. Paul Johnson from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts was one of the happiest first-time champions I've ever talked to a year ago this weekend. Bob Elliott, well, it's one of the few times he gets to strut his stuff in his homeland. The Ontario province adjoins Quebec, so he's not too far from home, Brock Yates.
Right, Steve, and they come in here just about equal as far as the qualifying times are concerned. Johnson qualified number 4 at a 6:09.0, and Elliott in 5th position at a 6:09.2. So theoretically, the cars are capable of running almost identically, Big Daddy, but that often doesn't happen when it comes down to real hardcore competition.
No, it doesn't. When they actually race, it's a totally different story.
Ooh, Johnson scrapes the wall, but keeps it right side up. He appeared to have had that lane beaten. He launched well. He was hanging right in there with Elliott, and all of a sudden, it veered over the center line, which was automatic disqualification. Then it slapped the wall. He was disqualified twice in about 1 second.
Yeah, you do. You go out both ways, don't you? You go out if you cross the center line, and you go out if you hit the wall. So Johnson had a double whammy put on him on that pass.
What do you think, Don?
Well, Johnson made a beautiful start, had a real nice reaction time. There he goes. You can see the tracks from the other cars, only this time Johnson didn't bring it back in time, and he did get across the center line. There you see him move over, and it slaps against the guardrail. Of course, it probably damages the car and probably hurts his feelings, too.
Well, Paul Johnson will carry a souvenir home from Montreal this year. It won't be the winner's trophy like he got 365 days ago. Just some scraped and some squashed up headers on the left-hand side. Sorry to see you out.
Well, I'm sorry to be out. We were looking real good there in qualifying. We felt as if we had a good shot at this event. But that's what happens. You know, there's not much you can do about it.
Looked like you got out of the groove and she was undrivable.
Certainly did. The left lane has historically been a little bit of a problem here. There's a bump there a little bit off the starting line, but we've had good luck in this lane. We were up here for the points meet in May, and we drove right through that thing. A real near miss with Bob Newberry, I'm sorry to say there too, but you know, we're happy with the performance of the car. It's unfortunate we had this problem.
We got another race coming up.
We'll be back.
And a good one it is. Bob Newberry, one of the finest runners in this business, against another excellent competitor, Terry Mullins, in the far lane. And I'll tell you what, Steve, these guys have gone at it a lot, and they've mixed it up pretty good over the years.
In fact, just 2 weeks ago, they had two head-to-head confrontations at the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio. It was Terry Mullins beating Newberry for the TRW All-Stars title, and then he beat him the following day on Sunday in Spring Nationals competition. Newberry manufactures racing parts. He needs to win to sell his products. Terry Mullins from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. That is one high-tech community where the atomic bomb essentially was first designed and built. And he is an aerospace and defense contractor. He races funny cars because he loves to. Prior to this, he was in drag boat racing.
So a little revenge factor in the place for Newberry, having gone down a couple of times to Mullins recently. Newberry is certainly capable of beating him, though. The two guys, excellent competitors.
Now look at Mullins. He got down that lane. Mullins maintained control. He still loses the race, but what a triumph. Just to get down that lane with a losing 6:18. Newberry, low ET of the day, at 6.07 seconds. Big Daddy, as we look at this race in replay, what did Mullins do right and what did he do wrong?
Well, to start right off with, they left like they were tied together. Both cars had almost identical reaction times, and somehow Mullins had his car set up so that he could get through that bump. It occurs right about there. Here we see he's still in the center of the lane in the groove. The problem that he encountered was Newberry. He had too much power on the top end. Runs a 232-mile-an-hour speed.
All right, so that sets up the final four for alcohol funny cars. It'll be Tony Bertone versus Bob Newberry. Obviously, Newberry with that 607 is the lane choice. Second pair, it'll be Dick Bell versus Bob Elliott. Bell will have the lane choice at 6.11 versus a 6.19.
We got some fun stuff coming to the line now.
Oh, yeah, tremendous variety in competition eliminator, from dragsters like that to almost street-appearing cars, all types of engine combinations. And it all works because of NHRA's index system. Every class has a performance index assigned to it, and that's what a well-prepared, well-driven car should run. Some can run right on it, some can run under it, some can't even get close to it, as it should be. Now, Tom Martino, he drives a C-altered car to be up against Richard Burke. Burke drives an A economy dragster, a much quicker car. Well, if you subtract the two indexes, 765 from 845, you come up with 0.8 of a second, and that advantage off the starting line will be given to Martino to even things up. Now, you can run as hard as you want in competition eliminator, unlike some other sportsman categories that have what they call a breakout. This is real hardcore, expensive sportsman racing. All right, the yellow car will be allowed to leave first. You'll see the staggered start of the tree. Woo, Martino. He cut it too thin. It's going to be Burke, as Martino instantly disqualified. Even though Burke saw that red light, he still ran it fairly hard. I'll say 724 to 148 miles an hour. Miles an hour tells you that he got off way, way early to kill that speed. Martino departing with a red light and a 799.
So these drivers have to squeeze the tree to get an advantage at the starting line, even though they have a staggered start. They've got to get a head start on their competitor.
When you run one of the most powerful cars in the class, you hope for a break every once in a while, and you got one, Richard, a red light on the opponent.
Yeah, I think I was pretty lucky with that one. Tommy's real tough. He used to run him back in the old days in super gas and bracket racing, and he just had to push it just like we always are.
You know, in this class, you can build a fairly slow car or a very quick car. You've chosen the quick side.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of going fast. You know, everybody wants to go fast, and we just thought chasing everybody might be a little bit of an advantage, so that's why we chose this route.
All right, headed for the Final Four with a run in the mid-720s is Richard Berg.
Okay, back to the starting line where more colorful automobiles come to the line. That's the Dragster of Paul Giannone. That's B Dragster. And in the other lane, well, look at that. A little cut down 34 Ford of Vinnie Barone, one of the neatest cars in this class. That's an A Street Roadster. And the index difference is what, Steve?
It is 76/100ths of a second, and the advantage will go to this man, Vinnie Barone, who has as much fun drag racing as any competitor I've ever met. Always laughing, loving it. Paul Giannone, Burlington, Massachusetts, in the B Dragster. He runs on an index of 775 as compared to Barone's 851, and there you can see that 76/100ths of a second I was talking about. Now, some people think, gee, how can you just sit there and have to wait and wait and wait? Like Giannone, well, you hope your other competitor red lights, as we just saw, and it's all over before you ever even leave, Don.
But boy, I'll tell you, it is tough sitting there and watching your competitor drive down the strip. And from the starting line, it looks like you'll never be able to catch him.
Here we go.
The pressure gets to Giannone, a red light. So Vinnie Barone will cruise home the winner, even though it looks like a very close race. Obviously, Giannone just feeling that kind of pressure that Big Daddy talked about. An 8:02 for Barone, a good stout run. Back at the starting line now, we've got David Rampy, who is the defending Winston champion in comp. He'll go against Larry Kopp, two similar automobiles. The only difference is engine size, an F and a D altered. So as Rampy and Kopp stage, let's go to the other end with Steve and Vinnie Barone.
Well, there's one for the street roadster lovers of North America. Great job, 8:02, Vinnie.
Oh, good. I lost the clutch on that deal. We slipped the clutch all the way down. I'm surprised it run that fast. God, this thing's been running good, though. We run 8 flat, a couple of runs in a row, so we're pretty happy. I guess we'll put a little clutch in it, and it'll be fine for the next round, hopefully.
So Vinnie still having fun as Larry Kopp moves his D altered into position there. The man from Baltimore, Maryland. His index is an 865. He goes against David Rampy, as I said, the champion in this class, in a C altered, Woodland, Alabama. There you can see the difference is the index comparison, and Rampy's starting line advantage, 0.33 seconds. So he'll get a little bit of a launch, Big Daddy, but the pressure's on him as well. He's got to cut a good light or else he's going to get run down by the faster car.
That's right. He just can't leave when he wants to because it's all got to do with time.
There you can see Kopp trying to run down Rampy. Will he do it? No. Rampy wins it.
8.43 seconds, 159 miles per hour for Rampy to Kopp's 8:11. But Kopp had the racetrack been 20 feet longer, might have been another story, right, Don Garlitz?
It sure was. And we watch this replay, we see Rampy take that starting line advantage, and that makes a lot of difference. He got him out first, and he stayed out there.
I don't know. Which would you want to, if you were competing in this class, would you want to be the slow car or the fast car, Ben?
I believe I would rather be the slow car and get the starting line head start and let the guy try to run me down, because as you sit there and wait for that tree to activate, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made.
And we've seen it made. Now, let's go to Steve with the winner.
World champion David Rampy, and more important, brand new father David Rampy. Nice victory.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We've really been struggling, and I ain't been driving good at all, so I hope I had a good light then. We outrun him, so must have done something right.
Well, a brand new dad, you can drive for the kid now. You got something to motivate you.
Yeah, that's for sure. I gotta make a better living now to pay for him, huh?
All right, see you in the round of 4.
So more comp round 3 action. This little automobile, that is Steve Ambrose, and that little L altered with a 6-cylinder up against a Pontiac Trans Am of Dave Northrup. That's a D altered. So 2 radically different automobiles that the fans really like when they see this kind of competition, Steve.
Oh, I think so, Brock. The true hot rodder, maybe the guys from the old days, they're going to ride with that beautiful little 6-cylinder Roadster and Ambrose. And maybe kids that got involved in the 80s and even the 90s, well, they like the kind of wheels that Dave Northrup of Dolestown, Pennsylvania tools down this Dragstrip. Little something for everybody. But for Ambrose, there'll be a head start of 12/100ths of a second, and he better spend it wisely.
Yes, we've seen that the slower guys have done pretty well here so far, Big Daddy.
Well, they've done well because they're out in front. As I said, it's very nerve-wracking to be there. See, notice how he drives a little out of the groove even as he goes down the track.
But the winner is Northrop, the beautiful blue car with the shootout at 826, 163 miles an hour, even though he took the long way down. Ambrose trails with the 6-cylinder roadster at an 838, 157 miles an hour. But here, the real difference was Northrop. He got a hole shot. He reacted to his light better than Ambrose.
In this kind of racing, it's real difficult to see who really gets the hole shot because of the staggered start. They're really getting the good start on the light itself because the race is figured that the car should be dead even at the end of the race if it was each car ran according to its index. But you will not be able to see that till the cars get to the end of the racetrack. And here we see them coming. They get very close right there at the finish line.
And enough to move Dave Northrop into the Final Four. He's going to face David Rampy in a pair of stock-bodied altered cars, whereas Vinnie Barone's 34th Street Roadster will face off against Richard Burke's Dragster.
Rich McPhillips will be in the near lane up against Steve Lampaugh. Now, as I'm sure you remember, McPhillips will have the lane choice. He had a much better 6:14 elapsed time in the previous round than Lampaugh 6:21. Lampaugh is working with that Dodge Pro Stock style motor, the V1 engine. The first time we have seen one, supercharged and fuel injected. And you could tell the Marylander, he was pumped about its performance up in round number 2 earlier today. Now, let's see if the Dragsters are as affected by that bump over in that far lane. I don't think they will be with their longer, more stable wheelbase. What a light for Lampaugh. Lampaugh, another brilliant hole shot, but he just gets bumped on the big end. 6:11 to a 6:24. The speed, well, there's the difference. 2:27 for McPhillips, 2:13 for Lampaugh, who continues to develop that Dodge combination. It may be deadly in the near distant future, Don.
Well, Lampaugh was brilliant on the starting line. He knew the performance of his car wasn't up to McPhillips. You know, 620s don't beat 610s. And so he really took a shot at that light. 4:18 was his reaction time. Very close to a perfect light. It almost held him off to the end.
Well, let's see who's going to face Rich McPhillips in the Alcohol Dragster Final, Bill Barney or Mike Koski. Both of them running really well here so far, but remember, Barney had to put in a new transmission after that 6:22 pass he just made, Steve.
You know, Mike Koski, interesting story. His car is called the American Flyer. We're looking at Barney here, but his opposition calls his car the American Flyer. He has named this hobby after another hobby. He is one of the nation's foremost collectors of American Flyer model railroad sets, and has many, many of them that have never, ever even been used. I mean, he's real famous in that particular hobby world.
Really interesting guy from Pennsylvania, and of course a man who is trying to repeat here, having won this event last year.
Here those RPMs come up as the tacks tickle the 9,000 mark. Barney away, Koski trying to keep pace. Can he do it? The defending champ is gone. Bill Barney goes to the final at 6.06. McPhillips won't like hearing that. 228 miles per hour.
As a matter of fact, they've had identical ETs, but it was a better reaction time on the part of Barney that pulled it off, Big Daddy.
It certainly was. They both ran 6.06 with a 6 carried out to the thousandths of a second. It was the reaction time of the .444 for Barney that made up the difference, and Koski was never able to really challenge him after that kind of a start.
Great drag race by both men, and Bill Barney now moves into the finals against Rich McPhillips. Let's go to Steve with Barney.
Identical speeds, identical elapsed times. That is what alcohol racing is all about. A 6:06, both of you.
That's what I heard. That seems like a heck of a race to me.
Well, you really whittled that down from the 620s. What'd you do?
Well, like I told you last time, we had to look, see what was wrong, and there were a couple little things that we did wrong, and I just made a couple adjustments.
When you race for a living in an alcohol car, every win light is a bill payer.
Oh, you know it. Absolutely. Great racing.
Okay, so Bill Barney heads for the finals at Alcohol Dragster as we go back to the pit area. There's a little hug on the part of his old rival, Koski. That is David Northrop's automobile. They're working on that. He's going to go against David Rampy in the Comp Final Four. We'll be back with more action from Sanair up in Quebec right after this.
Why is this woman so intent? Well, it's time now for the Final Four in top alcohol dragster. She's part of the crew for Dick Bell, and she's making sure that machine is lined up exactly in the burnout tracks. I'm Steve Evans, along with Brock Yates and Big Daddy Don Garlitz, and it'll be Dick Bell up against Bob Elliott.
Well, we got two guys sitting down in these race cars, Dick Bell and Bob Elliott, too, and one of them is going to be heading home in a truck after this because only one will get into the finals here at Sanair, and Dick Bell and Bob Elliott.
It appeared that it was all over for Bell, that Elliott was going to be your winner. Something happened to Bell, and then Elliott started playing bumper cars over in that far lane. And I know the rule book just like you do, Big Daddy. He's out of here. He hit that wall. He has been disqualified, and Dick Bell has been resurrected.
Well, actually, Steve, it's not hitting the wall. He was already disqualified before he hit the wall. It's when that tire crosses that outer yellow line, this side of the wall. You'll see the yellow line as he moves down track. He gets closer and closer, and once that tire goes over, it's all over. Of course, now he hit the wall. He's very lucky that he was able to save the car.
Now, how would you like to beat Tony Bertone? You don't have lane choice. The guy that went down the lane in front of you smacked the wall. Now you have to run in his tracks, well, hopefully not all of his tracks, up against one of the toughest in the country, Bob Newberry. But 1 year ago today at this racetrack, Newberry suffered a humiliating experience. This was his car in the near lane up against Paul Johnson. Newberry was the better of the two as far as elapsed times were concerned, but the engine didn't know that. The engine let go of Newberry's car. He oiled down the racetrack. The underdog won. It was so late in the day we had to come back the following morning to finish the race. Newberry, after this, we're going to let you forget that. We will never show that video again, I promise.
Yeah, poor Bob would really like to forget that. He's haunted by that whole deal. And I think the one thing he doesn't want to do today is break something.
Ooh, little wisp of tire smoke. Getting close to the wall, but steering back is Tony Bertone. Newberry, you have vindicated yourself. Bob Newberry at 6:07, 232 miles an hour, heads for the final round. Now let's see how the comp cars are affected by lane conditions, if at all. Now, Dave Northrup has the lane choice and has taken that lane over there up against David Rampey. Hey, go figure. Some cars react differently to lanes than others. Just depends on wheelbase and power, and if you're comfortable over there, stay there. 26 hundredths of a second will be the advantage, and that will go to the slower of the two cars, Rampey in the near lane, the Harold Stout automobile. So a pair of very pro-stock looking machines meeting up here in the final for a comp. Ooh, brilliant start by both drivers.
But Northrup breaks right away. Something happens to Northrup, and he will fall away here as Rampey drives on through at an 850 and heads into the finals in a relatively effortless fashion.
Let me correct something there. That was not a brilliant start by Rampey. He was about a tenth of a second late on the light. He probably would have been thrilled had his opposition not had more problems than he did. It was not a particularly good start. Vinnie Barone, one of my favorite drag racing cars. I like any kind of street roadster. And Vinny's up against the kind of car he doesn't like very much. Richard Burke has a Dragster, and the Dragsters have longer wheelbase. They're a little more stable, and they don't tend to get you in trouble while you're trying to shift gears. 86 hundredths of a second will go to Vinnie Barone.
Well, generally speaking, you know, the longer wheelbase car can put up with a more difficult lane than the short wheelbase. So the way this race is set up right here, both cars are in a good lane for a race.
Yeah, as you say, the little short wheelbase car in the lane that has not bitten quite as many people as the one that Burke is in. So the light comes down, there goes a 0.83 second advantage to Vinnie Barone, but here comes the little economy dragster.
And it is the Dragster, Burke, who nips Barone right at the wire, even though Barone had a 1200ths advantage right off of the starting line. That just shows you that there's always a little sandbagging going in this kind of competition. It's smart racing. Don't show them everything you've got, especially the NHRA Index Committee.
But in this particular case, Steve, Burke had to show him everything he had. He ran a 706 on a 765 index, and it's a good possibility with that kind of a change that NHRA would change the index right at this race, and that would be a terrible disadvantage to him in the next round.
So it'll be Burke in the Dragster versus Rampey in the Altered in the finals of comp.
We, of course, are down to finals in alcohol dragster, alcohol funny car, and here is the competition eliminator final round.
And this is going to be an interesting one. David Rampy, the defending champion in that pretty little Chevy Beretta, he's going against Richard Burke in that big dragster that ran so well last time out. In fact, produced some suspicions on our part that the NHRA might hit him right in the old index department, and I think that happened.
I know that happened. They knocked it down by 8/100ths of a second. And on this afternoon, that only affects him. During the week, they may drop it for every economy dragster in the country, 5/100ths of a second. So Burke, he said it had more. Well, it better. He said whatever it takes to win. Well, he's done that. Rampy in the Harold Stout-owned automobile, beautiful machine. Both of these really well-maintained, beautifully presented automobiles. The classic wire wheel look of the dragster. The Don Garlits had a lot to do with it all going away in the top fuel cars, but they still use them here at Comp Eliminator. Oh, Burke, brilliant start. Burke had a much better reaction time, and here comes Burke. Ho, ho, ho. But when they whacked his index, they whacked his chance of winning this thing. Rampy, 839 to a 708. Burke runs it out the back door, almost 190.
Well, that's just exactly what happened, Steve, because when we put the numbers all out here, he gained 5/100ths on his lead over Rampy, but he lost 8/100ths on the index. Well, when you add that all up, it's like he ran 8.40 and Rampy ran 8.39. 1/100th of a second difference in the cars at the very end, and that's just exactly what you see. David Rampy takes the win.
That dragster came by you so fast it about peeled the decals off this car, but he just wasn't soon enough.
I'm telling you, that's a real close one. It really was. I'd just like to thank the Lord because we've really been struggling, and we finally maybe turned this thing around. Thank Stout's RV Sales and Donnie Gardner for doing a great job on the car, and say hi to my wife and Chase.
Bob Newberry versus Dick Bell. Newberry, who was runner-up here a year ago. Dick Bell, who got a big piece of luck when it appeared that he had lost. The other car smacked the wall. He was reinstated, so it's a reprieve for him. Newberry, Big Daddy Don Garlits, I'd bet on him.
Well, I would too, because Dick Bell is sitting over in that lane that the car smacked the wall in. Now he's over there, so you know that's got to be on his mind.
I knew you wouldn't be easy in the wager department. How about you, Yates? I'll wager a buck or two on Newberry.
Well, Newberry, don't forget, still has not forgotten that little embarrassment he suffered here last year, and he is definitely out to make up for that problem that he had. The Bell boys, well, they're a great bunch of competitors, but Newberry, of course, is a top runner in these ranks nationally, and it's pretty hard to bet against him, especially as Big says, when we stuck old Dick Bell over in the evil stretch of asphalt on the far side.
Let's remember now, we're in Montreal, Canada, not San Diego, California. And the winters here really clobbered this racetrack. This track was not nearly that bad in the 4-lane a year ago, and I'm sure the Jacques Carton, the owner here, and NHRA will get together, and they'll give them a picture-perfect surface to run on both sides next year. It is not bad for some competitors this year, just some worse than others. All right, Newberry hoping all the rods stay in the motor this time. Dick Bell with a good start. Dick Bell out of control. Bob Newberry will be your champion. Newberry at 6:09, 2:31. Bell, well, a 6:42, 22, and a game effort to run that fast in a car that sideways.
Well, we haven't seen a really clean pass by any of the alcohol funny cars in that far lane, have we, Big Daddy?
Well, Dick Bell made a race out of it. He took a very nice start, took an advantage, but it wasn't long before the car moved around a little bit. He kept it in the groove fairly well, but it gave Bob Newberry all that he needed to go on. He made a nice conservative start, didn't want a red light. There we see Bell out of shape, but he brings it back very nice. It moves around again, but all of the time that this is happening, Newberry is getting away. And that's the name of the game. Get to the finish line first, and that he did.
Well, what a difference a year can make. In fact, exactly 1 year ago, we were looking at a defeated Bob Newberry with an engine spread all over the racetrack. Not so today, champ.
Better racetrack. Just had a better day. My crew was perfect. They did a great job. And I'd like to thank my sponsors, Joe Amato, Key Parts, Keystone, and Oldsmobile. And
keeping lane choice was a big deal.
The right lane was definitely better for the alcohol funny cars. There's a little bit of a tough transition in the left-hand lane, and the right-hand lane smoother. And we were fortunate enough to run quick enough all day and stay in the right-hand lane.
The alcohol dragsters come to the line, and that is Bill Barney in that pretty Castrol-sponsored automobile that's run so well here all afternoon.
And he is up against Rich McPhillips. Now, McPhillips does this as a hobby, hopes to offset a lot of his racing costs with prize money. Bill Barney was a very successful food broker in Sacramento, California. He got bitten by the drag racing bug, did business and raced, and finally said, if I'm going to win a Winston Championship, I'm going to do it full time. Sold his business, moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. He is a completely committed competitor.
Well, let's see how he goes. Remember, he had a terrific race against Mike Koski. They both ran identical ETs, 6.0, 6.6, carried out to a couple of places. Just nipped him on a great start, and we'll see whether that works again with Rich McPhillips. Of course, McPhillips is in that nasty old lane over there, but it may not have as much difference with these longer wheelbase cars.
I don't think so. I think the alcohol dragsters are faring much better in the far lane than the short wheelbase cars.
Boy, it sure caused some problems with funny cars. Good start by both cars. A little twitch, though, by McPhillips.
And that's all it took for Bill Barney to win the title today. 6.03 seconds, 227 miles an hour. McPhillips, twitch and all, 6.15 seconds. Let's go to the starting line. Brock's with Mike Cooper, winning crew chief.
Mike, great show. Car was just steady all afternoon, really.
Yeah, after the first pass today, I was really concerned, but we made the transmission change and the car come right around. I was a lot concerned over Mike Koski. I was tickled to death to get around him.
He's defending the place.
Yeah, and Rich, I was glad to get around that man, too.
Well, great work, Mike. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Yes, sir.
Well, that transmission gear change was definitely the thing that set that car free. Here we watch the replay, and we can tell that McPhillips knew that he didn't have a 6.0 in the car, so he squeezed the tree and took a nice starting line advantage. Barney was very conservative. He knew he had the power. He knew he had the setup. As they moved down track, he just kept putting more and more distance on McPhillips till finally they got down to the end, and he had him almost by a car length. Definitely the winner.
There was a time around the second round it looked like Bill Barney might be on the ropes, but he was just playing a little rope-a-dope because he comes back in the final and fires off the quickest elapsed time we have seen all day long among the alcohol dragsters. And then since he gets us here, let me help you. An 03, that's right.
That's right. All right. Boy, that was great. Pretty exciting, I'll tell you that.
You know, you moved from California to Tennessee, you share a shop with Terry Mullins. That all appears to be working for you. Your confidence is up, your performance is up.
Yeah, overall, our whole game plan seems to be on the right track. Hopefully, we've made a few mistakes this year, like all of us do once in a while, but I think we're back on track.
I think John Howell-Castrol is home watching this on TV and loving every minute of it.
Well, I hope so. Good going, John.
The champ in alcohol dragster. Bill Barney does it for a living, and that stuff.
Our congratulations to Bill and all the winners at the NHRA Canadian Sports Nationals. For Big Daddy Don Garlitz and Steve Evans, I'm Brock Yates. Thanks for joining us.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen.
We look forward to the annual trek here next year. And as people are taking their time going out...
The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.